Captain Lee Taman stared at the blinking red light on his control panel. The emergency beacon had been sending the same distress signal for 3 days now. It came from Kepler 442c, a planet so far from Earth that most people had never heard of it. "Captain, we should ignore it," said Park So-ra from her engineering station. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and worried eyes. "Command told us to stay on course to the mining station." "A distress signal is a distress signal," Tae-min replied. He was older, 42, with gray starting to show in his hair. 20 years in space had taught him that ignoring calls for help usually meant people died. "We check it out." Kim Jin-woo looked up from his medical equipment. The ship's doctor was quiet most of the time, but he always spoke sense. "The signal is weak. Whoever sent it might already be dead." "Then we make sure," Tae-min said. He pressed the navigation controls. "So-ra, change course for Kepler 442c. Jin-woo, prepare the medical bay. If someone is alive down there, they might need help." The Horizon Walker was not a big ship. It carried only 3 crew members and supplies for long-range exploration. Tae-min had commanded her for 5 years, mapping unknown star systems for Earth's colonial expansion. They were good at their job, but they were not soldiers. 3 hours later, they reached Kepler 442c. The planet looked beautiful from space. Green forests covered most of the land. Blue oceans sparkled under the light of 2 small suns. White clouds drifted across continents that seemed untouched by civilization. "I'm getting readings from the surface," So-ra reported. "There's a research station in the northern continent, but Captain, I'm also picking up something else." "What kind of something else?" "Ships, big ones. They're not human designs." Tae-min felt his stomach tighten. First contact with alien species had happened only 5 times in human history. Each time had been peaceful, but that didn't mean the next time would be. "How many ships?" 6 that I can see, maybe more hiding behind the planet." "Any weapon signatures?" So-ra's fingers danced over her controls. "Yes, Captain, lots of them." Tae-min made his decision. "Take us down, but keep us hidden. Use the mountain range to block their sensors." The Horizon Walker dropped through the atmosphere like a falling leaf. Tae-min had learned to fly in Earth's military before becoming an explorer. Those skills came in handy now as he guided the ship between tall peaks covered in strange purple trees. They landed in a valley 5 kilometers from the research station. Through the view screen, they could see smoke rising from several locations. "Jin-woo, you stay with the ship," Tae-min ordered. "Keep the engines warm. So-ra, you're with me." "Captain, maybe we should call for backup," So-ra suggested. "The nearest Earth ship is 3 weeks away. If someone needs help, they need it now." They put on their environment suits and stepped outside. The air was breathable according to their sensors, but Tae-min didn't want to take chances. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth's, making each step feel like a small bounce. The forest around them was unlike anything Tae-min had ever seen. The trees had silver bark and leaves that changed color as they watched. Small flying creatures that looked like tiny dragons darted between the branches. In the distance, they could hear sounds that might have been singing. "This place is incredible," So-ra whispered. "Stay focused," Tae-min replied, but he agreed with her. The planet felt alive in ways that Earth's cities never did. They moved through the forest toward the smoke. After 20 minutes of walking, they heard voices, not human voices. The words were sharp and clicking like insects talking. Tae-min held up his hand and So-ra stopped. They crept forward until they could see through the trees. What they saw made Tae-min's blood turn cold. The BA research station was burning. Human bodies lay scattered around the buildings. But that wasn't the worst part. In a clearing near the station, alien soldiers stood in a circle. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms each. Their faces had too many teeth and eyes that reflected light like mirrors. They wore armor that seemed to be made from living metal. Inside their circle, 3 massive creatures lay dead. They looked like tigers, but they were huge. Each one was the size of an elephant, with golden fur marked by black stripes. Even in death, they were beautiful. But it was what lay next to the dead giants that made Tae-min's hands shake with anger. A small creature, no bigger than a normal Earth tiger, cowered next to what must have been its mother. It was just a baby, with soft golden fur and eyes that held too much intelligence for an animal. The cub was wounded, blood matting its fur on one side. One of the aliens raised a weapon that glowed with blue energy. The weapon was pointed at the cub's head. "Specimen elimination protocol initiated," the alien said in perfect English. "Juvenile Cathara will be terminated to prevent future breeding complications." The cub looked up at the weapon. Its eyes showed fear but also understanding. It knew what was about to happen. Taemin had seen many terrible things in his years in space. Pirates, slavers, criminals of every kind. But he had never seen anything as cold as this planned execution of a child. "Captain," Sora whispered behind him. "We should go, there are too many of them." Taemin looked at the small creature waiting to die. Its eyes met his across the clearing. In that moment, something passed between them. Recognition. A plea for help that crossed every barrier of species and language. "No," Taemin said quietly. "Captain?" I said no. He stood up, his hand moving to the plasma rifle at his side. "We don't walk away from this. There are 12 of them and 2 of us. This is suicide." Taemin smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "Sora, you know what humans are really good at?" "What?" "Making bad odds work in our favor." The alien's finger tightened on the trigger of his weapon. The blue glow grew brighter. Taemin stepped out of the forest. "Hey," he called out in a voice that carried across the clearing. "Pick on someone your own size." 12 alien weapons turned toward him. 12 sets of mirror eyes focused on the human who had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Or maybe, Taemin thought as he raised his rifle, the biggest mistake of theirs. The 12 aliens turned their weapons toward Taemin. For a moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the crackling of flames from the burning research station. Then Taemin fired. His plasma rifle sent a bright red beam across the clearing. It hit the alien who had been about to kill the cub. The creature screamed and fell backward, its weapon spinning away into the grass. "Sora, cover the left side," Taemin shouted as he rolled behind a fallen tree. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air where he had been standing. "This is crazy," Sora yelled back, but she was already firing. Her shots were precise, hitting 2 aliens in the chest. They dropped their weapons and stumbled. Taemin had fought in 3 different wars before becoming an explorer. He knew how to use terrain, how to move, how to think like a soldier. The aliens were clearly fighters, but they fought like they expected easy victories. They stood in the open, relying on their superior numbers. That was their first mistake. Taemin sprinted from tree to tree, using the forest as cover. Each time he stopped, he fired 2 quick shots and moved again. The aliens tried to follow him, but they were too slow. Their armor was heavy, and they didn't know the ground. Within 3 minutes, 6 aliens were down. The remaining 6 finally figured out they needed cover and scattered behind rocks and trees. "Human," one of them called out. His voice was like grinding metal. "You have interfered with official Villani Empire business. Surrender now and your death will be quick." "Counter offer," Taemin shouted back. "Leave this planet and I won't kill the rest of you." The alien laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "You are one small human. We are the Villani. We have conquered 47 worlds. Congratulations, this won't be the 48th. Taemin moved again, flanking 2 aliens who had taken position behind a boulder. He came up behind them and fired twice. They fell without making a sound. 4 left. "Sora, status report," he called. 2 more down on my side, Captain. But I'm running low on power cells. Conserve your shots, make them count." The remaining aliens had figured out they were losing. They tried to group together, but that just made them better targets. Taemin picked off another one as it ran between positions. 3 left. Then he heard something that made his blood freeze. A low whimper of pain from the clearing where the cub still lay beside its dead mother. The small creature was trying to crawl away from the battle, but it was badly hurt. Blood was spreading across its golden fur. One of the remaining aliens saw the cub moving. He raised his weapon and aimed. No. Taemin roared. He broke cover and ran toward the clearing, firing as he moved. His shot took the alien in the head, dropping him instantly, 2 left. But now Taemin was exposed in the open. The last 2 aliens had clear shots at him. "Captain, get down," Sora screamed. Blue energy bolts flashed past Taemin's head. He dove and rolled, coming up next to the wounded cub. The small creature looked at him with eyes full of pain and confusion. "It's okay," Taemin whispered. "I've got you." The cub made a soft sound, almost like a purr mixed with a whimper. One small paw reached toward Taemin's hand. More plasma bolts lit up the air around them. Taemin shielded the cub with his body and returned fire. His shot caught one alien in the shoulder, spinning him around. 1 left. The final alien stood up from behind his cover. He was bigger than the others, with more elaborate armor. Scars covered his gray face and his mirror eyes burned with rage. "You killed my squad," he said, walking slowly toward Taemin. "For what? One worthless animal?" "This animal has more worth than your entire species," Taemin replied. He kept his rifle trained on the alien, but he could feel the power cell was almost empty. "You humans are all fools. Soft. Weak. You care about things that do not matter. Maybe. But we're still alive and your squad isn't." The alien raised his weapon. Not for long. A plasma bolt came from the trees. It hit the alien commander in the back and he fell forward, his weapon clattering across the rocks. Sora stepped out of the forest, smoke rising from her rifle barrel. "Nobody threatens my captain." Taemin grinned. "Good timing." "Are you hurt?" she asked, running toward him. "I'm fine, but this little one isn't." Taemin gently touched the cub's wounded side. The creature flinched but didn't try to move away. "Sora, call Jinwoo. Tell him to prepare the medical bay for a patient." "Captain, that's an alien life form. We don't know anything about its biology." "Then we learn fast." Taemin carefully lifted the cub. It was heavy, maybe 50 kilograms, but not too much for him to carry. The creature made that soft purring sound again and pressed its head against his chest. "Jinwoo here," came the doctor's voice through their communicators. "I heard the shooting. Are you both alive?" "We're alive, but we're bringing company. A wounded alien that looks like a big tiger cub." There was silence for a moment. "Captain, regulations say we should not interfere with alien life forms without proper authorization. Jinwoo, do you remember the oath you took when you became a doctor? First, do no harm." "Right. This creature is hurt and needs help. Are you going to help it or not?" Another pause. "Bring it to the ship. I'll do what I can." As they walked back through the forest, the cub nestled against Taemin's chest. Its breathing was shallow but steady. Every few steps it would look up at his face with those intelligent golden eyes. "What are we going to call it?" Sora asked. Taemin thought. For a moment. "Horang. It means tiger in Korean." "Horang," Sora repeated. "I like it." They were halfway back to the ship when Sora's scanner started beeping. "Captain, I'm picking up ships moving in orbit. Lots of them." "How many?" 20. Maybe more. They're heading this way." Taemin looked down at the small creature in his arms. Horang was looking back at him with complete trust, as if he knew this human would protect him no matter what. "Then we better move fast," Taemin said. Behind them, smoke continued to rise from the research station. The dead Villani soldiers lay where they had fallen, and somewhere in orbit, an alien fleet was coming to find out what had happened to their ground team. Taemin had just made an enemy of an entire empire, all for one small creature who couldn't even speak. He looked down at Horang again and smiled. It was the best decision he had ever made. 3 days later, Taemin was running for his life. The Horizon Walker shook as another energy blast hit their shields. Alarms blared throughout the small ship. In the engine room, Sora was working frantically to keep their power systems online. "Shields, down to 40%, she called out. "I can't take much more of this." Taemin gripped the pilot controls as he spun the ship through an asteroid belt. The Villani hunter ships were faster and stronger, but they were also bigger. He could use that against them. Jinwoo, how is our passenger? Taemin asked. Growing. Fast, came the reply from the medical bay. Too fast. I've never seen anything like it. In the 3 days since they had rescued Ho-Rang, the cub had doubled in size. He was now as big as a large earth tiger and still growing. But it wasn't just his body that was changing. His mind was developing at an incredible rate. Ho-Rang had learned to understand human speech within the first day. By the second day, he was solving simple puzzles Jinwoo gave him. Now he was trying to help repair the ship, watching Sora work and somehow knowing which tools to bring her. Captain, Sora's voice was tense. The Villani ships are spreading out. They're trying to surround us. Taemin pulled the ship into a sharp turn around a large asteroid. The Villani ships followed, but they couldn't match his tight maneuvering. One of them scraped against the rock face and fell behind. How many are still chasing us? He asked. 4. But Captain, I'm getting readings from the jump point. More ships are coming through. Taemin cursed under his breath. They had been running from system to system for 3 days, but the Villani kept finding them. It was like they had some way of tracking the ship that he couldn't figure out. A low rumble came from behind him. Ho-Rang had entered the bridge, moving, with the careful grace of a natural predator. In just 3 days, he had grown from a wounded cub into a magnificent creature. His golden fur gleamed under the ship's lights and his eyes held an intelligence that was almost human. But it was more than intelligence. Ho-Rang seemed to understand things he shouldn't be able to understand. Sometimes Taemin would catch him, staring at the ship's controls with a look of concentration, as if he was figuring out how they worked. Ho-Rang, you should be resting, Taemin said. The great cat made a sound that was almost like speech. Not quite words, but close enough that Taemin could usually figure out what he meant. This time, Ho-Rang was trying to say something urgent. He moved to the scanner display and put one massive paw on the screen. What is it, boy? What are you trying to tell me? Ho-Rang's eyes focused on the display showing the Villani ships. He made that almost speech sound again, more insistent this time. Suddenly, every alarm on the ship went quiet. Sora, did you shut off the alarms? Taemin called. No, Captain. They just stopped on their own. Taemin looked at the scanner. The 4 Villani ships that had been chasing them were drifting dead in space. Their engines were off, their weapons were down, and they weren't moving. What the hell? Ho-Rang made a pleased rumbling sound, almost like a purr, but deeper. He was looking at Taemin with what could only be described as pride. Did you do that? Taemin asked the great cat. Ho-Rang nodded. It was clearly a human gesture, something he had learned by watching them. How? In response, Ho-Rang moved to the communications panel. He placed his paw on the controls and suddenly the bridge filled with alien voices. The Villani crews were shouting at each other in their clicking language. Through the translation software, Taemin could make out fragments. Systems failing. Bio-neural networks offline. Something is interfering with our ship functions. Captain, Jinwoo's voice came over the intercom. You need to see this. I've been studying Ho-Rang's biology and I found something incredible. Can it wait? We're kind of in the middle of something. This is related. Ho-Rang's nervous system isn't like anything I've ever seen. It's partly biological and partly something else. Something that can interface with technology. Taemin looked at Ho-Rang, who was still standing next to the communications panel. You're saying he can control machines? I'm saying he can talk to them. The Villani use bio-neural networks in their ships. Living computers. Ho-Rang can communicate with those systems directly. And tell them to shut down? Among other things. Taemin grinned. Ho-Rang, can you disable all the Villani ships in this system? The great cat tilted his head, considering. Then he moved to the main computer terminal and placed both front paws on the interface. Every Villani ship on the scanner stopped moving. 12 hunter-killer vessels, including the reinforcements that had just arrived, were now floating helplessly in space. Incredible, Sora whispered from the engine room. Their biosignatures are all going crazy. It's like their ships are having nervous breakdowns. But Ho-Rang wasn't finished. He made that almost speech sound again, and this time Taemin could almost understand it. It sounded like he was saying more. More what, boy? Horang moved to the long-range scanner and touched the screen. New contacts appeared, hundreds of them spread across 3 nearby star systems. The entire Villani fleet, Taman breathed. You can sense all of them. Horang nodded again. Then he did something that made Taman's heart race. He looked directly at him and spoke a single clear word in perfect Korean. Friends? Jinwoo's voice came over the intercom, shaking with excitement. Captain, I think Horang isn't just one individual. I think he's connected to his entire species. Every Kethara that's still alive. How many are left? Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. They're hiding all over the planet, and Horang can feel all of them. Taman felt a chill run down his spine. The Villani aren't just hunting one creature. They're trying to eliminate an entire species that can shut down their technology. That's why they want them dead, Sora added. The Kethara are a threat to their entire empire. Horang made another sound, but this one was different, sadder. He touched the scanner again, and Taemin could see energy readings from the planet's surface. Massive explosions were lighting up the continents. They're bombing the planet, Taemin said quietly. While we've been running around out here, they've been killing Horang's people. The great cat looked at him with those intelligent golden eyes. In them, Taemin could see pain, loss, and something else. Determination. Horang moved to the pilot's chair and put his paw on Taemin's arm. When he spoke again, his voice was clearer, more human. Home, he said. Go home. Save family. Taemin looked at the scanner showing the disabled Villani fleet. Then he looked at the readings from the planet where an entire species was being slaughtered. Sora, how long to get back to Kepler 442c? 6 hours at maximum speed. But Captain, there are hundreds of Villani ships there. It's suicide. Not if Horang can shut them all down. And if he can't? Taemin smiled grimly as he set course for the planet where this had all started. Then we make them pay for every life they've taken. Horang settled beside the pilot's chair, his massive form radiating calm confidence. When he looked at Taemin, there was no fear in his eyes, only trust. The Horizon Walker turned toward home, carrying 3 humans and 1 very special alien toward a battle that would determine the fate of 2 species. Kepler 442c was burning when they arrived. From orbit, Taemin could see the scars across the planet's surface. Entire forests were gone, replaced by black craters. The purple trees that had seemed so magical just a week ago were now ash and smoke. Readings show massive bombardment across all continents, Sora reported, her voice tight with anger. They're not just targeting military sites, they're destroying everything. Horang stood beside Taemin's chair, now fully grown. In 1 week, he had reached his adult size. He was nearly 3 meters long and stood as tall as Taemin's chest. His golden fur had darkened to a deep amber, and black stripes marked his powerful frame. But it was his eyes that showed the biggest change. They burned with an intelligence that was both alien and somehow very human. How many ships? Taemin asked. 200 in orbit, maybe 50 more on the surface. Sora's hands moved over, her controls. Captain, we can't fight that many, even with Horang's abilities. Horang made a low sound, almost like words. Over the past few days, his speech had become clearer. Not fight all, fight smart. What do you mean, boy? Horang moved to the tactical display and touched the screen. The image changed, showing the Villani fleet formation. Most of the ships were arranged around one massive vessel that dwarfed all the others. Command ship, Horang said, his voice getting stronger every day. Leader there. Stop leader. Stop all. He's right, Jinwoo said from his medical station. Villani operate with strict hierarchy. Remove the command structure and the rest will be confused. Taemin studied the display. The command ship was surrounded by 20 escort vessels. Getting close would be nearly impossible in a direct assault. Horang, can you disable their shields from here? The great cat tilted his head, considering. Then he placed both paws on the computer interface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every screen on the ship lit up with Villani ship signatures. I feel them, Horang said quietly. Their ships think, like living things. But they hurt. They scared? Scared? The ships are scared? Bio-neural networks, Jinwoo explained. The ships have artificial consciousness. Horang can communicate with them directly. Horang's eyes closed in concentration. When he opened them again, the Villani ships on the scanner had gone dark. Some listen, he said. Some not. Leadership has strong walls. Cannot reach. Then we do this the hard way, Taemin said. He activated the ship's stealth systems and began moving toward the planet. Sora, prepare the shuttle. Jinwoo, pack your gear. We're going down to the surface. Captain, that's suicide, Sora protested. Maybe. But Horang's people are dying down there. We can't just watch from orbit. Horang made that rumbling sound that was his version of agreement. My family calls. Must help. They landed the shuttle in a mountain valley far from the main bombardment sites. The air was thick with smoke and ash. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of weapons fire and explosions. As soon as they stepped outside, Horang's behavior changed. His head lifted, nostrils flaring as he tested the air. Then he made a sound Taemin had never heard before. It was deep and musical, like a song made of growls and purrs. From somewhere in the forest, another voice answered. Then another. And another. They're still alive, Horang said, his voice filled with joy and relief. Many still alive. Within an hour, Cathara began emerging from their hiding places. They came in small groups, families of the great cats moving like shadows, through the burned forest. Adults were even larger than Horang, some standing 4 meters tall. Cubs stayed close to their parents, their golden eyes wide with fear and hope. But it was the way they greeted Horang that made Taemin's breath catch. Each adult approached the young cat and touched their forehead to his. When they did, both animals' eyes glowed with a soft light. They're sharing memories, Jinwoo whispered. Look at their neural activity. Through his medical scanner, Jinwoo could see energy patterns flowing between the creatures. Information, emotions, and thoughts were being passed from one to another, in seconds. An elderly female, her fur marked with silver, approached Taemin directly. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. You are the human who saved our young one. Taemin's jaw dropped. You can speak our language? Horang shares what he learns. We all learn. We know of your kindness, we know of your courage. She dipped her massive head in what was clearly a bow. We are in your debt. No debt, Taemin replied. We help because it's right. More Cathara were arriving. Taemin counted over 100 adults and twice as many cubs. But their reunion was interrupted by the scream of aircraft engines overhead. Villani attack ships were sweeping the valley, searching for survivors. They found us, Sora said, raising her rifle. The lead Cathara female made a sound like controlled thunder. Instantly, every adult cat moved to shield the cubs. But they didn't run. We fight, she said simply. No more running, no more hiding. You can't fight gunships with claws and teeth, Taemin protested. Horang moved to his side. Not just claws. Watch. The young cat closed his eyes and reached out with his mind toward the approaching aircraft. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lead gunship suddenly veered to the right, its weapons firing into empty air. The second ship's engines cut out, and it crashed into the mountainside. The third began spinning in circles, completely out of control. Their ships have bio-neural pilots, Jinwoo realized. Horang is confusing them. But more ships were coming. Too many for Horang to handle alone. That's when the other Cathara began to sing. It started with the elderly female, a deep harmonic sound that seemed to come from the earth itself. One by one, the other adults joined in. The sound grew and spread, becoming something that Taemin could feel in his bones. And somehow, impossibly, it was working. The Villani ships began falling from the sky like broken toys. Their bio-neural systems couldn't handle the psychic song of an entire Cathara pack. They're all connected, Jinwoo breathed. The entire species shares one collective consciousness when they need to. Within minutes, 20 Villani attack ships lay scattered across the valley floor, their crews either dead or unconscious. The Cathara stopped singing and looked at Taemin expectantly. "Now what, human friend?" the elderly female asked. Taemin looked at the crashed ships, then at the Cathara, then at his small crew who had followed him into this impossible situation. "Now we take the fight to them," he said. "If you can bring down attack ships, you can bring down their command vessel." Ho-Rang's eyes blazed with fierce joy. "Together we fight. Together we win." Above them, the Villani fleet continued its bombardment, unaware that their greatest nightmare was awakening in the mountains below. The hunt was about to become a war. The Villani command ship hung in orbit like a metal moon. It was 5 kilometers long and bristled with weapons that could destroy entire cities. High Executor Threndal stood on its bridge, his 4 arms crossed in frustration. "Report," he commanded. "We have lost contact with 23 attack squadrons," his lieutenant replied nervously. "Ground forces report massive equipment failures across all fronts." "How is this possible?" "Unknown, High Executor. But the failures began shortly after we detected the human ship returning to the system." Threndal's mirror eyes blazed with rage. One human had already cost him an entire squad. Now it seemed that same human was somehow turning the tide of a planetary bombardment. "Find them," he snarled. "Find the human and his pet, and kill them both." Far below on the planet's surface, Taemin was making final preparations for what might be the last battle of his life. The Cathara had gathered in a hidden valley over 300 adults and twice as many cubs. They moved with purpose now, no longer afraid. Ho-Rang stood beside him, no longer the wounded cub he had rescued just a week ago. The young Cathara had grown into a magnificent warrior, his amber fur gleaming in the light of the 2 suns. "The command ship has shields we cannot break from here," Ho-Rang said, his speech now perfect. "Must get closer." "How close?" Taemin asked. "Very close. Inside close." Sora looked up from the modified weapons she had been working on. Over the past day, she had figured out how to combine human plasma technology with Cathara bioneural interfaces. The result was weapons that could adapt and think on their own. "The command ship has boarding tubes," she said. "If we can get a small team inside, we might be able to reach their main computer core." "That's suicide," Jinwoo protested. "There will be thousands of Villani soldiers on that ship." "Not if we time it right," Taemin replied. He looked at the gathered Cathara. "How many of your people can connect to their fleet at once?" The elderly female who had become their leader stepped forward. Her name was Arathes, and she was over 200 years old. "All of us together can reach every Villani ship in the system, but only for a short time. The effort will exhaust us." "How short?" "Perhaps 30 minutes, maybe less." Taemin nodded. "That's enough. Here's the plan." 2 hours later, Taemin found himself in the cargo bay of a captured Villani shuttle, along with Ho-Rang and Sora. Jinwoo had stayed on the surface with the Cathara, helping coordinate their psychic assault on the Villani fleet. "This is insane," Sora muttered as she checked her modified weapons one more time. "Best kind of plan," Taemin replied with a grin that didn't hide his nervousness. Ho-Rang was perfectly calm, his golden eyes focused on something only he could see. "It begins," he said quietly. Far below, 300 Cathara began to sing. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every Villani ship in orbit suddenly lost power. Weapon systems failed, shields collapsed, and life support began shutting down. The bioneural networks that controlled their technology were overwhelmed by the psychic song of an entire species. "Now," Taemin said, their stolen shuttle docked with the command ship, just as its defenses went offline. Emergency lighting flickered throughout the massive vessel as its system struggled to reboot. They moved quickly through corridors filled with confused and panicking Villani soldiers. Most of the aliens were too busy trying to figure out what was wrong with their equipment to notice 3 figures moving through the shadows, but their luck didn't last long. "Intruders on Deck 7, came an announcement in the Villani language. All security teams respond. So much for stealth, Sora said as plasma bolts began flying down the corridor. The fight through the ship was brutal and desperate. Villani soldiers poured out of side passages, their weapons working sporadically as Horang's presence continued to disrupt their bio-neural systems. But there were too many of them. "Captain, I'm hit," Sora gasped, clutching her left arm. "How? Bad?" "I'll live. Keep going." They reached the main computer core just as the Cathara song began to weaken. The psychic assault had lasted 28 minutes, but the great cats were exhausted. Systems throughout the command ship were slowly coming back online. "Horang, can you access their main computer?" Taemin asked. The young Cathara placed his paws on the central interface. Lights began flickering across the massive system as he made contact with the ship's artificial consciousness. "I'm in," he said. "But their security is fighting me. Cannot hold for long." "How long do you need?" 2 minutes, maybe 3. Taemin heard boots in the corridor outside. Lots of boots. "Sora, guard the door. Horang, do whatever you're going to do fast." The battle for the computer core lasted exactly 2 minutes and 47 seconds. Sora's modified weapons held off wave after wave of Villani soldiers, their adaptive programming making each shot more effective than the last. Taemin fought beside her, his military training keeping them alive against impossible odds. Then Horang screamed. It was a sound of pain and triumph combined, echoing through the ship's corridors. Every screen on the bridge flickered and went dark. "What did you do?" Taemin asked. Horang opened his eyes, and they were different now. They glowed with an inner light that seemed to contain entire galaxies. "I became one with their network," he said softly. "All their ships, all their weapons, all their knowledge. It is part of me now." The ship shuddered around them. Through the viewports, they could see the entire Villani fleet turning its weapons on itself. Ship after ship exploded as Horang turned their own systems against them. "Stop," came a voice from behind them. High Executor Threndal stood in the doorway, his personal weapon aimed at Horang's head. His armor was scorched and his mirror eyes burned with hatred. "Release control of my fleet or I will kill you all." "You're going to kill us anyway," Taemin replied. "Perhaps. But if you surrender now, I will make it quick." Horang looked at the Villani commander with those glowing eyes. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of an entire species. "Your fleet is already dead. Your empire will fall. But I offer you one chance. Leave this place. Leave this galaxy. Never return." Threndal laughed bitterly. "You think one primitive world can threaten the Villani Empire?" "No," Horang said calmly. "But every world you have conquered can. Every species you have enslaved. I carry their memories. Now, I know where they are. And soon, they will know they are not alone." The High Executor's weapon trembled in his grip. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Throughout the galaxy, on dozens of conquered worlds, enslaved species suddenly heard a voice in their minds, a voice that spoke of hope, of resistance, of a small world that had said no to the Villani Empire and won. Rebellions began on 17 worlds within the first hour. Threndal saw the reports flooding in and realized what the creature had done. "You've doomed us all." "I've freed us all," Horang corrected. The High Executor raised his weapon one final time. Before he could fire, Sora's shot took him in the chest. He fell backward, his mirror eyes reflecting the stars one last time. 3 months later, Taemin sat in a garden on Kepler 442c, watching Cathara cubs play among flowers that had grown from the ashes of Villani ambition. The planet was healing, faster than anyone had thought possible, as if the world itself was celebrating its freedom. Horang lay beside him, now even larger than before. The connection to the Villani network had changed him in ways they were still discovering. He could communicate with any technological system in the galaxy, and through him, the Cathara had become the guardians of dozens of liberated worlds. "Do you ever regret it?" Taemin asked. "Taking on all that responsibility?" Horang was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the wisdom of ages. "You taught me that sometimes one person must stand up for those who cannot stand. up for themselves. I learned from the best teacher. What will you do now? What humans do. Protect those who need protecting. Help those who need helping. Make sure no one else suffers what my people suffered. In the distance, a group of young Kethera were learning to interface with the planet's restored biotechnology, guided by human engineers who had stayed to help rebuild. Two species working together, making something better than either could create alone. The Villani were right about one thing, Taman said. What's that? Humans are soft. We care about things that don't matter to most species. He scratched behind Horang's ear, earning a contented purr. But maybe that's not a weakness. Maybe, Horang agreed. That's our greatest strength. Above them, ships from a dozen liberated worlds brought supplies and volunteers to help with the reconstruction. The galaxy was changing, one world at a time, because one human had refused to let a child die alone. And in gardens across Kepler 4A42C, tiger cubs played safely in the sunshine, never knowing how close they had come to never existing at all.